everyone. Welcome to News Extra, and we have a special guest today. We have Matt Innis, who is running for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate for the seat currently held by Ben Sasse. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
People out here may not necessarily know the name Matt Innis, so introduce yourself to everybody, if you would.
Well, I'm the former Lancaster County Party chairman. I was the chairman between 2011 and 2015. I oversaw we were able to take back the city council over my tenure. And I live just outside of Lincoln, Nebraska with my wife, and a couple boys are still at home.
Okay.
A couple are moved out. I have a network cabling company that I run pretty much throughout Nebraska. And, I spent about 8 years in the Marine Corps, and now I'm running for U.S. Senate.
And thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
So what prompted you to take a look at running for this office?
It was over a number of years when Donald Trump first started getting in the race, and then watching interviews that Senator Sasse was doing on CNN. It was one of those frustration times when you would see your U.S. Senator run to cameras on these liberal news media outlets and liberal late night talk shows. And the first thing he always wanted to do was just bash Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump wasn't even the nominee first, and he's up there he's calling him a New York liberal. He's saying that he's a megalomaniac. He's comparing him to David Duke. He's saying that, if this guy gets elected, he's going to put the worst judges in that we could even imagine. He's going to destroy America. And it bothered me because there's so many people that were really looking at Donald Trump as the anti-politician, somebody that was not what Washington always had. And someone like me that was very frustrated with Washington, and that we just kept sending the same people to Washington and getting the same result. And it was time to shake things up. And then over time, he was going around and, when Trump was the nominee, he was saying, I can't go to the convention. I'd rather watch a dumpster fire in Nebraska. And after that, and watching the state party do a resolution to condemn him in his actions, where they voted overwhelmingly to rebuke him with his never Trumper talk and his third party talk, I started thinking about coming in the race.
Okay, now, of course, Sasse has kind of, I don't want to say moderated in some of his positions here lately, but has seemed to be a bit more supportive of the president as time has gone on. Do you find that as obviously a positive for President Trump? And what does that mean for your candidacy?
Well, I don't see him doing that. I just see him keeping his mouth shut, is all I see. But he couldn't keep his mouth shut with the Ukraine incident. He came out, if you remember, when the whistleblower documents were like, this is going to be out there and Trump's going to be in trouble. He came out and said that the whistleblower report was very troubling and concerning, and that Republicans should not be circling the wagon on this. And I came out and said, absolutely, we should be circling the wagons. This is enough. This president has been harassed for 3 years plus. Before he was in office, and now he's in office. We've seen what the Obama administration, what Clinton's and what the media has done to him, and enough is enough. And I don't think Sasse was expecting, when he made those comments, that the president was going to release a transcript. And it ended up backfiring on him, because people in Nebraska, the state party was just inundated with phone calls for weeks about those comments. Well, then he shut up. And that's all he's done. He hasn't supported the president. Now, granted, he did change his literature because people were upset of his anti-Trump stance, and he changed some of his literature to make it look like he supported him. But this is a guy who wants to jump on the coattails of the man he said couldn't nominate a good judge, and that was going to be no different than David Duke, and was going to be a horrible president. And now all of a sudden, because he's up for re-election and he has somebody running against him, now he's trying to say, well, okay, I support some of these policies, and look at all the judges we did. Well, he hated Trump, and he didn't want Trump appointing judges. He was okay with the fact that Hillary Clinton, if she was president, she was going to be right away appointing a Supreme Court justice, because the next president was going to be doing a replacement. And he didn't want Trump to do it.
Well, there are some issues that Matt has stances on, of course, a variety of them. going forward as he campaigns for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. And we'll be right back on News Extra with more in just a minute. We're back, everyone. On News Extra today, we have Matt Innis, who's a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate, looking to get the nomination for the seat currently held by Ben Sasse. Again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about issues. There's some local things going on here across the state, legalization of medical marijuana being one of those. What's your stance on that?
Well, right now, we don't have any legitimate studies that are done where the federal government can come in and say, yes, we can confirm that this study has been done and medical marijuana helps with this. And the reason we don't have that is because of the classification of the drug. I would be open to allowing, not declassifying the drug, but to allow the studies to be confirmed, because a lot of the studies are being done by outside sources that are pushing for legalization of marijuana. Now, I am not for, recreational marijuana at all. But I'm open to seeing if there is any medical benefits to it and actually having legitimate studies done. Right now, you ask any doctor that has any information on this, they're going to tell you that we just don't know if it can help out with any of this. And that's something that I would be open to allowing that study to be done. But right now, we have to be very careful. It's a slippery slope, and absolutely, we do not want recreational marijuana in Nebraska.
And on agriculture, obviously a supporter of agriculture in the state.
Oh, the Kansas Federal Reserve came out and they were talking about that Nebraska has 49,000 farms in Nebraska. They have more farm counties and more farm banks than any other state in the country. And I believe they calculated the revenue that we see in Nebraska from agriculture at $28 billion. And on top of that, 25% of every job in Nebraska is in agriculture. It's our lifeblood. And this is what is the most important thing, for anybody that wants to represent Nebraska.
Okay, now there are a couple of national hot button issues that are out there right now. With the shootings that have taken place, there are a lot of states, Nebraska being one of them, considering red flag laws. I understand that's an area where you and the senator disagree.
Correct. So Senator Sasse came out and said that he'd be open to a red flag law. And I came out and was very clear that the problem that we have is the first thing that they do when we have a shooting or we have something that's very emotional is they don't want to look at what is the underlying problem. What was wrong with that individual? Instantly, we have to do a law and we have to restrict guns. And it's all based off of emotion. And that's what they try to get every individual to go along with, your emotions. When we do that, we will if we make laws based off of emotion, we will strip away our liberties and our rights instantly. I was somebody that was against the Patriot Act because I would tell people, we can't have this done. And they would go, oh, no, we can trust George Bush. And I'm like, okay, but we give this power to George Bush. You understand we're giving it to everybody that comes after him. And can we trust people after that? So with red flag laws, you're going to give power to unelected judges that they can have the right over people. And whether you say you can trust somebody now, always remember that person will be replaced at some time. And can you trust them? We can never, ever give up our liberties.
Now, you had mentioned earlier being very supportive of the president and a lot of his policies. I would assume, does that mean also on his actions so far on immigration? Is he going the right direction?
I think he is. And I think, what we're going to see with the Supreme Court looking at DACA right now is that if they rule against President Trump, and this is going to sound odd, but if they rule against President Trump, they will, in fact, give a president power that was never intended by the founding fathers. Right now, DACA was enacted it was done by President Obama without an action of Congress. And he just allowed it to happen. Basically, he said, we're going to ignore federal laws and we're going to allow these people in the country illegally. And President Trump is like, no, we're going to enforce the laws. I mean, what a novel idea. Let's enforce the laws. If you don't like the laws, there is a process of changing them. If you don't like things in the Constitution, there's a process of changing them. You don't have the right to ignore them. So if the Supreme Court rules against President Trump in there, they're basically saying that a president can ignore the laws of the land, and it would change his oath of office.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch and see what the Supreme Court does.
One other thing, of course, Matt being somebody who's been in the broadcasting arena, we could talk for hours on all kinds of things. But one other subject I'd like to touch on before we go, the trade issues with the tariffs and, of course, the farmers and the impact on the ag sector. Some people obviously against it, others supportive of what the president is trying to do, especially when it comes to China.
Yes. So I've been all over the state of Nebraska, and it's the same message that I hear from farmers and ranchers. They're very supportive of the president. It is incredible to see the amount of support they have for the president. They're willing to ride this out, but they also have another message that they give me. They are incredibly upset with the members of the swamp, mainly people like Ben Sasse who came out against this. They're upset with the liberal media. They're upset with the Democrats because they look at this is that if China could have seen a united front, that with their 27-year low in their economy right now, they're being crushed by this. We are not. When President Trump, when he got elected, the Dow hit 19,000. It hasn't even been 3 years. And you look at the Dow is up over 8,000 points. That's incredible. And China is being crushed. If everybody would have gotten behind the president with this trade war, it would be over with. Yeah. But China's going to ride it out. They're going to sit there and see, will President Trump get elected? Because they know that the option other than Donald Trump is weakness. And that's what they're waiting for. Trump gets reelected, they're going to cave. And that's going to be very, very good for Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we're out of time here, unfortunately, today with Matt Innis, who's a former Lancaster County Republican Party chair, as well as a successful businessman in the Lincoln area and across the state. Matt, I want to thank you very much for stopping in and joining us for News Extra today.
Thanks for having me.